Okay, now I've got Joe Hind, who's a non-exec member of London FA and also co-founder of Bird Soup. First of all, Joe, can you just explain what you do with Bird Soup?
So, we are a people transformation consultancy. So we work with organisation to develop managers, leaders. We do a lot of work with female leaders and, helping women in their careers. So, work with lots of different organisations.
How did you get involved with the London FA?
So I was really involved in coaching my son when he was much younger. So did my FA level 1, was a parent volunteer. And then when he kind of grew up and went off to uni, I really missed being involved in football. And somebody said, look, you can get involved as a council member on the London FA. So I did that in 2019 and then just sort of signed up for anything and everything and got involved originally in the Women and Girls Advisory Group and then went on to be the vice chair of that. I was also first woman on the Cups and Competitions Committee, worked on another kind of couple of governance things, and then I applied to be a board director and got appointed in January of this year. So I'm kind of leading the women and girls on the board anyway.
Okay, and when did you get involved in football? Was it planned as a youngster, or was it something you've done as an adult, just training your son, or how did it start?
So I loved football as a kid, but I'm of that age where, you couldn't play as a girl. So as a kind of fan and then as a parent, I actually started playing in 2019, so women's rec football. So I'm really late to it, but very keen to make up for lost time. And it's actually really interesting now how many opportunities there are for women that want to play that kind of recreational level of football. I mean, there's so many teams in London now. It's kind of really interesting how much it's growing.
Did you want to do it when you were younger, but the barriers were too big, or was it something you just didn't even think was a possibility?
I played every sport known to man. I was one of those annoying kids. But football wasn't on the agenda at all. It just wasn't even talked about. I think, my brother kicked balls at me and my sister in the garden, but that was about as far as it went.
How long ago was it you started coaching your son and got involved in that side of it?
15 odd years ago. Yeah. So, and that was really interesting. I was on a level 1 coaching course. There were about 40 of us and there were 2 women. So I think it's changed a lot. Obviously, there's been a lot of initiatives around 100 FC, which is women-only entry-level coaching, which is fantastic. But I wasn't kind of particularly daunted by that because I kind of thought, well, I might not be able to play football, but I understand it and I watch it. I've just as much right to be here. But I think for some people that could be a barrier.
How much do you think it's evolved in those 15 years?
I'd say it's evolved massively. So I remember when my son was kind of, 12, 13, there was one team we used to play, had one girl playing who was the best player. And actually that was interesting to see that interaction. And they were all really kind of impressed by how good she was. To see the club he played for at the time, they were just beginning to have girls play. And now they've got girls at every single age, and they're doing really well. So I think it's changed a lot. I think that obviously the success of the Lionesses, the fact that WSL is now televised, I think it's growing a lot, but I think there's still barriers there. I think there's not enough female coaches, there's not enough female referees. It's amazing today to see a female referee kind of running things. And access to facilities is a real issue across the board, particularly somewhere like London. But because the men's game, the men and boys game is, so much maturer, it means that, they've got those relationships already, so it's quite hard for the women and the girls coming along to get access to the facilities.
Are there any cultural barriers for a woman or girl to play football still? Is there still a bit of a taboo over it?
I've certainly played in facilities where you see men kind of thinking, what are you doing here? Why are you playing football? But I think the momentum is such that I think that will change very quickly. And I think young boys now see women, men, girls, boys playing football. So I think that will change. But I do think there is. And I think there's things like, there's a lot of safeguarding issues, I think, sort of getting access to facilities where, it's well lit, or there are changing facilities. And a lot of the people from different cultures and different backgrounds, there are issues that, need to be taken into account with that as well.
Do you think it's also an issue in London? You know, if you're going out to Kent or Surrey or Essex, probably people are getting driven there by their parents. London, it's a little bit different, isn't it? And if it's late at night, you've got to travel home, you've got to get the bus. Do you think issues like that still need to be sort of looked at?
They definitely do. And just making sure that young girls from less privileged backgrounds who might not have a parent with a car are able to access opportunity as well. And, you know, what Girls United are doing that in terms of making football more accessible. And, that's really, really important, because otherwise, you're just going to miss on talent from those communities, but also just making it so, everyone's got that opportunity. And it's still not available in all schools for girls. I know the commitment is there, but the reality is kind of lagging behind slightly. Yeah,
because when I was just talking to Abby, we were talking about really, schools, educational establishments need to get more involved, don't they, with offering girls football?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I know from when my son was at school, quite often it's not the PE member of staff that will take on the school football team, and that's for boys. So to find another teacher that's going to do it for the girls, that's another challenge. So yeah, there's a lot of things that need to kind of fall into place.
Do you think, I understand you're a Norwich City fan,
yeah,
and that's had a high-profile woman as sort of owner or running the club for quite a few years, and we've had Karen Brady. Do you think we need more women on the executive side of football as well?
Absolutely. It's one of my big bugbears. I did an analysis actually when I first was on the London FA Council, looking at all the clubs in London across the top tiers and looking at how many of them have got a woman on their board or anywhere near their board. There are some pockets of good practice. So Brentford are very good. I think they've got 2 women on their board. But yeah, there definitely is. And you're still hearing I had a really awful story from National League Awards a couple of years ago from a couple of clubs that said some of the speeches were just from the 70s basically, and just very derogatory, not just to women, but to other groups as well. And you need those women in the boardroom, and there's Women in Football you might be aware of who do amazing stuff, promoting women in the game from all aspects and helping women get into those positions. In the London FA board now is I think it's almost 50-50 men and women, which is really good. And I think probably the best out of county FAs, but I'm not sure how many actual CEOs of county FAs that there are. But yeah, there's a long way to go.
And tying it into what you do with Bird Soup, I mean, is there an industry that could set a standard for football? Is there somewhere that's done it better? Or
do you know what? I don't really think there is, and that's quite depressing. The gender pay gap is pretty bad, and it's got worse post-lockdown. And I think there are a lot of organisations that say, yes, we want our board to have a better gender balance, but quite often what they do is they don't promote someone onto the board internally. They'll get a non-exec externally so that they can make their lump number look good. So yeah, there's a lot to do.
How do you see the future of the women's game going, and how do you see your involvement in the future?
I think the sky's the limit, really. So you've got the new football structure set up, which is really interesting, and they've got female CEO, impressive people there. I mean, I think there's such a disparity in the game from men and women, but equally what's really interesting is the brands that now really want to get involved in women's football, because they see it as a much more family-friendly product. So I think from all aspects, I mentioned coaching, refereeing, playing, just making sure those opportunities are there. So I think the momentum is there, or investment, obviously, but I see my role as just being, really annoying and kind of asking the questions and kind of pushing where needs to be pushed. So we've managed to get a lot more investment into facilities for women through the London FA, which is brilliant. So we get that budget release. And doing things like, I know you've been at the Girls Cup finals before, so we didn't even have those 3 or 4 years ago. So I think there's lots to do, but there's definitely the demand and the desire for it.
Any personal ambitions to be like head of London FA or anything like that?
Do you know what? I'd love Delia's job now that she stepped down. No, I'd love to get involved with a club further down the line, and it's just be really interesting to learn kind of more about football from the club aspect. I've learned loads about kind of governance and, how the county FA support, so it's early days on that. So yeah, I'd love to get more involved.
I know your son's playing today, is he? And how's he getting on?
I think he's a bit hungover, but he has scored 2 goals, so not too bad.
Sounds very good. Must have been the coaching he got when he was younger. Thanks a lot.